Hi everyone, welcome to 164 Diecast. A couple of weeks ago I did a video on the new Alienware Area 51 that I bought to upgrade my primary computer system. But before that, I had purchased an Alienware Aurora ACT1250 with an Intel 285K. I bought this system because Micro Center put it on sale for $21.99. The lowest price I could ever see this identical system at on the Alienware website was at least $3,400 and often more. The Area 51 at that time was over $6,000. So when I saw this, I went ahead and bought it. Then, as you already know, the Ryzen 9950X3D version of the Area 51 came out, and in March I was able to get one for under $5,000. The big knock on this Aurora is many of the parts, including, if not especially because of, the motherboard, are proprietary. But I just needed it to do a specific job, and for the money, it fit the bill. I found plenty of info and videos on the Aurora R16, which was the first version of this new design. Though it is 2 years old now, and the first systems had Intel 13900 or 14900 processors. But virtually nothing on the current ACT1250 model, here with the Intel 285K and the 5080. So I'm going to do a quick look at it here for those who might want to know a little bit about it before making a decision to buy one. Micro Center currently is still selling these at $22.99 and seems to have plenty of them right now. The Alienware site is still over $1,000 more for the identical system. My Aurora ACT1250 has the Intel 285K, a RTX 5080, a 2TB bare-bones Micron Gen 4 NVMe, 32GB of basic RAM running at 5600 megatransfers. Despite the info from Alienware saying it is 5200, all of my software that checks these things is reporting 5600. A Wi-Fi 7 Bluetooth 5.4 wireless built into the motherboard, but no external antenna. I'm having no issues with connectivity or speed, which is hitting close to 900 megabits a second. A 1000 watt power supply, and a 240mm AIO to cool the 285. There is a single fan at the lower front of the case and one at the upper rear to exhaust hot air. Let's take a walk around the system. But first, a quick review of the Area 51, which has been running for me for a few weeks with no issues. So a quick little update on the Alienware Area 51 that I purchased. It's been a little bit of time now since I did the video on it, and I've been using it to play games and to do my checkbook and emails and other stuff like that, and it is running absolutely beautifully. It's running right now. As you can see, it makes no noise. There's a very, very slight hum from the fans that you can barely tell, and you got to listen for it if you want to hear it. I have changed up the lighting a little bit to make it a little more pizzazzy. So this video doesn't really show what the lighting looks like, but the lighting is absolutely beautiful. It's not over the top like some things are that I've had in the past, but it is running really great. I love this thing. So just want to give you a little bit of understanding of that before we get into the video on the Aurora. And this here right here is Miss Molly. This is my girl cat. She's, as far as age is concerned, she's in the middle. And she is a absolute sweetheart, and she likes hanging around with me too. So there you go. Let's go take a look at the Aurora and see what that one's all about. Also wanted to give you a quick update on temperatures. As you can see, they are running very cool. My ambient temperature in the room here is about 74 degrees. So you can see I am running in the mid-20s at idle. This is at idle, mid-20s. So I'm running very, very cool. And I've been running this now as my regular daily driver for about 2 weeks. Had this thing for about 2 weeks now. So here is the Aurora, the Alienware Aurora system that I bought. I actually bought this way before I bought the Area 51. And the reason why was because the Area 51 at the time was way too expensive. So I was looking at these because this has the Intel 285K processor with an RTX 5080 in it, a 2 terabyte Gen 5 hard drive, and 32 gigs of RAM. Now, these are proprietary. That's one of the knocks on the Auroras. However, these are really meant to be for beginner gamers more than anything else. But the reason why I bought this was on the Alienware website, these were varying anywhere between $3,200 and $3,800 to $4,000, depending upon when you bought them, if you got them on sale. However, a bunch of these went on sale at Micro Center for $21.99. At that price, with an Intel 285K and an RTX 5080, that was a spectacular price. So I went ahead and I bought this because I didn't think I was going to be able to get an Area 51 because they were too expensive. So that is the reason why I bought this. So what this is now is this is pretty much an extra system that I have. And that, of course, is the Alienware OLED 1440 monitor. Beautiful monitor, just like the 4K monitor that I have on the Area 51. So we will take a look at the inside of this Alienware Aurora. So let's start with a quick walk around of the ACT1250 Alienware Aurora with the Intel 285K processor. So here's the front, powered on. There's the power button. You can see it lit up. It's in green. There's our front ports. 3 USB-A's and a USB-C, along with the audio jacks. And if we pull back here and we go around to the side, this is what the side looks like. As you can see, it's solid. We'll pull that case cover off in just a minute here and take a look at the inside, see what it looks like, see what the wiring looks like on it. And here we are, we're looking at the back now, and you'll notice up here, that is the hard drive activity light, which is a very strange place to put it. I don't know why you would put it on the back. You would think you'd want to put it on the top or the front where you could actually see. But then again, a lot of systems don't have a hard drive activity light anymore. Right below that, you have the SPDIF jack and your audio ports, and USB-C, USB-A, and your NIC for your networking. And then right next to that are my USB-A ports where I have my keyboard and mouse plugged in. This comes with the exact same keyboard and mouse that the Area 51 came with, which is to say cheap. Of course, here's our exhaust fan and our Alienware tags. Down here we have the 5080 port, and then below that we've got our power supply and the light that tells you that the power supply is powered on and active. And we pull back. Here's the back of the 34-inch 1440 monitor. Like I said, it's an OLED. It's very nice. As you can see, my wires are kind of messy. That's because it's sitting on the countertop right now. I will be looking for a place to put this into use. I'm thinking about maybe making this dedicated to my sim racer. From this angle, down here we have air intakes where the power supply in the RTX 5080 is at, so it's pulling in air from there. You'll see much better when we pull the sides of the case off what it looks like. This has a 240 AIO, which to me is a little small for a 285K, but I'm not having any overheating issues or anything like that, but I would have liked to have had a 360 in here instead of a 240. And this, of course, is the 34-inch 1440p Alienware OLED monitor. As you can see, these things have beautiful screens on them. This thing pairs up nicely with the Aurora, as does my 4K monitor with the Area 51. What's nice about having an Alienware monitor plugged into the Aurora or my Alienware Area 51 is that they recognize them, and if there's any updates, it will tell you automatically. As a matter of fact, I just finished updating the firmware on this monitor because the system told me there was a new update available. All right, side panel has been removed, and so that you know, the side panel, that is not glass, that is plastic. So that is kind of to be expected on an Aurora. It is not an Area 51. All right, so side panel is now off the Aurora here, and we're going to go ahead and take a quick look at everything. We'll start up here with the AIO. Like I said, this is a 240 millimeter. There are the fans, as you can see, up there, cooling this. And we have our cooling tubes going down to our processor here. This is a Intel 285K. And as you can see, it's got lighting back there, LED lighting. There are the heat sinks for the VRMs. There's nothing fancy in this thing. This is a very proprietary Alienware Aurora motherboard. You're not going to be changing much on this thing. And here is the RAM sticks. As you can see, they are very plain, no heat sinks. But again, I'm not experiencing any problems with heat on this thing. These are advertised, I believe, at 52 or 54 mega transfers. I am actually getting 56 out of this per the software programs that are telling me what I've got. And then right in here, that's the NVMe SSD drive that came with it. I'm not sure if this is an SK Hynix or a Samsung drive. I got to double check on that. But right next to that, you can see I bought a Samsung 990 Evo Plus. It's not the fastest SSD drive, NVMe drive in the world. However, it's fast enough for this particular system. I'm not going to be using this for anything fancy. What we have here is the backup battery for your BIOS. And then right there, that is the Intel Killer Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. And then of course, here we have the RTX 5080. As you can see, they are not using a single cable. That is running double power cables into the plug here. However, it is plugged in fully and completely like it should be. And then there's the support bracket that holds it in place. And then down here, we have, it's hard to see, but there it is. There's our power supply. And they do give you a hard drive tray if you want to put a hard drive in. I know most people aren't probably going to do that. And then what we have right here is some kind of a bracket that directs the fan, I'm guessing. Because there's no fan here, I'm guessing there's a fan in there, and I'm not going to pull it apart to take a look. I'm just going to show it to you. And then, of course, here's our light bar and intake, air intake. So there must be a fan right there. I just haven't seen it yet. And as you can see, the box, as you look through this for the front connectors, kind of blocks the airflow a little bit. So as you can see, this is not the world's best system, but if you are just starting out for the price I paid, $2,200 for a 285K in a RTX 5080, that is a pretty doggone good price. And it runs just fine, and it does really well. I'm pleased with this one as well as my Area 51. And that is a look at the inside of the Alienware Aurora. And by the way, I didn't take the case cover off the other side, simply because it's just a pain in the neck to do, and I really couldn't care less what the wiring looks like on something like this. On the Area 51, it's very nicely done. You would expect that out of something that expensive. Something this cheap, basically, I don't care. There's not a problem with the airflow on this thing. So anyway, that's basically it. Like I said, the reason why I bought this was because of cost, and I was looking for a system to upgrade. However, now that I have the Area 51, this is not necessarily a system that I need at this point now. So it's an extra one. I will find a use for it. But the reason why I wanted to do this was I couldn't find any information on these things when I was looking around trying to get information on the Auroras, for the new Auroras. So I thought I would simply do a little bit of a video here so that anybody who wants to take a quick look at it can have a look. I know there are people that don't like these. That's fine. Everybody has their own preferences. And I'm not the world's biggest fan of this particular computer, but it serves its purpose. And that is a look at the ACT1250 Alienware Aurora.